Now this is something I've always wanted to try, but I thought it was just too difficult to make. But once I got started, I realised it's nowhere near as tricky as it looks. So let's get started and I'll show you how to do this. Now I'm going to be using batiks for this quilt. As you can see, I have a big collection here that I bought from a friend who used to travel to Bali to purchase fabric. But you could also use quilting cotton if you prefer. This is a practice block where I used quilting cotton and it came out just great. I only wish I had more of these fabrics, as I could have made a table runner. Now I'm going to show you how to create one of these blocks, but before you go ahead and make one yourself, I highly recommend watching through to the tips section of this video, because I'm going to show you some ways to speed up the process, reduce fabric waste and more. Now these tips may make a difference in how you go about cutting and sewing your fabric. So I'm going to start with a square of fabric that measures 2.5 inches by 2.5, which will be the center of the block. And then I'm going to take 4 pieces of contrasting fabric, and I went with black as I think this goes really well with batiks. I cut these pieces at 2 inches wide and just slightly longer than the center square. And before you go cutting your pieces at 2 inches wide like I did, I suggest you watch through to the tips section, as it will explain why you might want to make these strips smaller. Okay, so now I'm going to sew 2 of them onto the side of the square using a 1/4 inch seam. And once they're sewn on, I'll show you the back and you can see that the seams are pressed outwards. Now I'm just going to sew the other 2 pieces on as well, and once sewn I'm going to press these seams outward as well. And now we need to trim the block, and I'm going to be using the Pineapple Ruler by Creative Grids. Now this ruler has markings on it, making it easy to line up everything. Now you can see the square here marked round 1. Now all I need to do is place the square around the center block and then cut along the side to remove the excess. Then you rotate the mat, line up the ruler again and cut. And then you repeat that with the other 2 sides. And that completes round 1. Now before we continue with the tutorial, I'd like to thank the sponsor of this video, Craftsy, the online resource for crafters to find creative inspiration and learn new skills. Craftsy is jam-packed with classes on all sorts of topics, including quilting, sewing, knitting, crochet, cooking, painting, drawing and so much more. And don't forget the pattern library, where you can download unlimited quilt patterns. I really like this one. I've personally been searching Craftsy for classes on machine embroidery. As some of you may already know, we've been using our embroidery machine to quilt some of our smaller projects and absolutely love it. So I was happy to find the Machine Embroidered Quilt class by Elaine Roche. I haven't finished the class yet, but it has given me a different perspective on using an embroidery machine to quilt, as she does it in sections and pieces them together after. So I'll be getting out my embroidery machine to give this a try. I'm also continuing to progress through the long arm quilting show classes. Since I am a complete beginner, these lessons have been invaluable. There are so many great tips and hints. This guy is amazing. I'd love to be able to be as good as this one day. So if you'd like to level up your quilting skills, then the first 1,000 of my subscribers to click the link in the video description will get a full year of premium membership to Craftsy for only $1.49. Now let's get back to the tutorial. For round 2, I will need some coloured fabric, and I'm going to go with random colours. Now, as you can see, I have all different sizes of my batik fabrics. Some are scraps, some are fat quarters or layer cake size, and some are yardage pieces. So I'm going to start with the smaller pieces and cut them into 2-inch wide strips. And I just went ahead and cut a pile of strips in all sorts of colours in anticipation for the other rounds I will be sewing, but you can cut as you go. When cutting your fabric strips, you don't have to be accurate. As you can see here, I don't worry about cutting a perfect size. I just line up my fabric along the finished block and then cut the strips slightly larger than the width of the block. And then I use the first piece as a template to cut the other 3 strips. And I cut all these pieces in one go for all of the blocks that I'll be making for the quilt. And as you can see, I have clipped the 4 pieces to each block with a quilt clip. So once I have all the pieces cut, I'm just going to go ahead and sew these on in the same way I sewed the black strips on in round 1. And I went ahead and did that with all of the blocks, and I'm making 42 of them for my quilt. So now we have to trim the block back again, and this time we will be going to round 2 on the ruler. So I'm going to place my block so this section here is facing me, and then line up the round 2 square on my center square, and you can also use the white lines to help you line up the ruler. Once I'm happy with the placement, I'm ready to cut, and then I'll rotate the mat 90 degrees and cut again. And now I'll rotate my mat once again and repeat the process. So I'll line up the ruler using the round 2 square and cut the remaining sides. So there we go. I have all of the blocks trimmed, and now I'm going to begin round 3. And in this round I'm going to be sewing on some black strips, and we do this the same way we did for the previous rounds, and I've completed all of mine as you can see here. So I'm ready to trim these, and since we are on round 3 we need to find the square for that one. But as you can see from the ruler, there are no squares for round 3. Instead we use this line up here, and you can see that the numbers 3, 5 and 7 are printed on the ruler, so this is the line that will be used for cutting those rounds. So I just need to place my block like so, and then line up the white line of the ruler just under the triangle here, and once I have that lined up I can go ahead and cut. Then I'm going to turn the mat 90 degrees and cut again, and I'll continue like this with the last 2 sides. So all of my blocks are trimmed, and now I'm ready to go on to the next round. So this is round 4, and in this round I'll be adding some more coloured strips, and the same process applies. I just sew on the strips as I've done for all of my other blocks, as you can see here. Now when it comes to trimming the blocks, this time I'll be looking for the round 4 square on my ruler, and I'll line that up exactly as I did for round 2 and then cut the sides. Then I'll rotate the mat and cut the other 2 sides. So there we go, the block is trimmed, and I love how this is looking. The next step is the black strips, and I have completed one of those blocks as you can see here. Now I just need to trim these back, and this time we are once again using the white line to trim, and that is done exactly the same way as we did in round 3. So just line up the white line under the triangle and cut, and then rotate the mat and keep repeating that on all 4 sides. So I think you get the idea now. This is me trimming the round 6 block by using the round 6 square. And this is trimming the round 7 block using the white line. Now for round 8 we actually trim this one twice. So for the first trim I find the round 8 square on the ruler and do the usual trim on all 4 sides. Then for the second trim we use the white line on the ruler and line it up on the seam line like so, and then trim. And then I rotate the mat 90 degrees, and I'll continue trimming all of the remaining sides. Now we're on to the last round, and all we need to do here is cut 4 pieces of fabric that measure 2.5 inches by 4 inches, and I'll be sewing those on with a 1/4 inch seam. These are called rabbit ears, and they will complete the block. But of course we still need to trim, so I'm going to be using the round 8 square again and lining it up like so and cut, and I will repeat that on all 4 sides. So the block is done, and this measures 10.5 inches unfinished. Now if you're making multiple blocks like I have, then here are some tips to help you get this done faster and more economically. Or you can just fast forward to the end to see the completed quilt. Tip 1. Remember back to round 1 when we started with a square and then sewed some black strips onto it? Well, if you're making a ton of blocks like we did, you can speed up this process by using strips. For this method, I cut strips of the black and the coloured fabric and sewed them together. And as you can see, I press the coloured strips outwards. Then I subcut them into 2.5 inch pieces. I still had to sew on the other 2 pieces, but I found it a lot faster doing it this way. Tip 2. Chain piecing can help to speed up the process, so whenever I could chain piece, I did. I just added a strip to the side of each piece and went for it. Tip 3. We cut 2-inch wide strips for our quilt, but you can cut wider strips. However, the wider the strip, the more waste you will have. If you see in this example, I have 2 sides where the strips measure 2.5 and 2 sides where the strips measure 2 inches wide. However, when I trim the block back, they all end up being the same size anyway. So ultimately, if you want to save on fabric waste, then cut your strips at the lowest width possible to make this work, and that is 1 3/4 inches. Tip 4. Rather than completing one block at a time, sew all of the blocks for each round. This will make it easier to trim them all back in one go, as you won't need to remember each time how to line up the ruler. Tip 5. If you forget which round you are on, just count from the centre out. Now don't include the centre square when you are counting. Tip 6. We made this block to finish at 10 inches, but you can make this block in a 6-inch or 8-inch size using the Creative Grids ruler. Tip 7. I highly recommend using a rotating mat. It's one of my favourite purchases, but if you don't have one, you can either spin your fabric as needed or spin your mat. And there you have it, our quilt top is complete, and I absolutely love it. Now if you've enjoyed this tutorial on how to make a pineapple quilt block, please give us a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. And thank you for watching.